What's going on, boxing fans? Julian Williams with The Distance. Got a video for you guys today. Roberto Garcia versus Antonio Margarito is happening May the 8th. And, as we all know, Antonio Margarito has not been in the ring in almost a year and a half. And, and that's because, the substance found within his hand wraps by Nazim Richardson when he was scheduled to fight Shane Mosley for his WBA welterweight championship. Antonio Margarito is considered the most feared fighter in the welterweight division. And other than being the most feared fighter, Margarito, was starting to he was actually top fighter in the welterweight division. And that was because he defeated Miguel Cotto. And Miguel Cotto was number 2, and he became number 1 because Floyd Mayweather Jr. retired. And then that victory over Miguel Cotto, put him up to that top level. And he was just coming back after he lost to Paul Williams. He came back, had a very strong outing against Golden Johnson, and then he went back. He knocked out Kermit Cintron like 7 rounds, and then he came back and he pretty much pummeled Miguel Cotto and basically beat the shit out of Miguel Cotto over like 11 rounds in a fight that he was down on the scorecards from, and it was kind of coming back. But then he fought Shane Mosley, and it was a different fight. Mosley, came in, but this is the thing that really gets me. Shane Mosley came in, and pretty much fought very well, moderately paced fight, fought pretty much a smart fight, and he eventually knocked Margarito out. And as I mentioned, he hasn't fought since early 2009 because the question arose, because the substance found in his hand wraps. But the question arises whether or not he used plaster or not. Especially in his big fights. But the substances to make, the plaster Paris hand wraps were found within his gloves. I mean, not his gloves, but his hand wraps. So, my thoughts on that, as I mentioned in another video that I once had, I mentioned that a fighter has to know what is being, and when their hands are wrapped, they pretty much have to know what's being, done with their hand wraps. If anything odd, is going on with the hand wraps, a fighter would know. And Javier Capetillo, I believe he's been training Margarito his whole entire career. And and I guess Margarito didn't say anything and didn't know what was going on, and really it's bullshit, because really a fighter is gonna know what's being placed within the hand wraps, or whatever. But it's been scientifically proven that substances to make plaster Paris was within the hand wraps. So now a lot of people are questioning the career of Antonio Margarito. Did he cheat? Really that's the question that arises. Did he cheat in these big fights against Paul Williams, against Joshua Clottey, against Kermit Cintron, Golden Johnson, Miguel Cotto? Significant fights in his career, and these fights were over a span of like 2 years. These fights were very significant. And you can even go back to the first fight with Kermit Cintron, or even Sergio Martinez. Was he using plaster Paris then? But overall, this fight, I honestly don't think that anybody's going to buy this pay-per-view fight. And honestly, I don't know who's going to air Antonio, because who's going to air Antonio Margarito after he got caught cheating? No network is going to air a man that cheats. But at the same time, you can talk about steroids, or there are fighters that have been caught with steroids. They get a chance to, they get like a second chance, but not a fighter that puts plaster in their gloves, because there's a difference between using performance enhancers and using plaster. There's a total difference there. They're on 2 different levels. But at the same time, I think that this is a fight that Bob Arum put together so that Antonio Margarito, so it could look like Antonio Margarito didn't use plaster. And I would think otherwise if Antonio Margarito stepped in the ring, and continue and pretty much continue fighting, and he was knocking out everybody. But who's gonna fight Antonio Margarito now? I doubt Miguel Cole's gonna step in the ring with him. Floyd Mayweather Jr. definitely sure as hell not isn't gonna step in the ring with him. Manny Pacquiao, maybe. Bob Arum, wants to set that up. I don't know why, but Pacquiao's gonna whoop his ass, but because he's a fighter that doesn't move his head. But overall, I just think that this is a fight to make it look like Margarito didn't use plastic. Roberto Garcia is a fighter that kind of just stands. He squares up, has both sides of the body exposed, and it's pretty much as easy and susceptible to hooks to the body. It's really what he's susceptible to. And other than that, sometimes he lets that guard down a little bit and he throws a little wide. But there's times that he shortens the shots up. So really, Margarito, pretty much this is a fight that Margarito should definitely take. He should. This is a fight. This is a guy he should definitely take out. Roberto Garcia, and he's actually a good fighter. Roberto Garcia is a good fighter, but he's tailor made for Antonio Margarito. As I mentioned, he stands here, like squared up like this, has the gloves like kind of like that, and he steps forward. Really, not much footwork. Really, what Antonio Margarito wants, and the body is exposed. So, I just think that, and like I said, I'm not going to break down the fight, but I do think that Roberto Garcia is a tough fighter, and other than him being a tough fighter, I just don't think he has the ability to do anything to Antonio Margarito. I don't think he has the punching power. I don't think he has necessarily the speed and work rate, the output to beat Margarito, plaster or no plaster. But I just think that, honestly, I'm just going to say Antonio Margarito is going to win the fight. That's all I'm going to say about that. I just think it's a fight for Top Rank. That Top Rank's doing to make Antonio Margarito look much better. Look much better than he is, and make it look like, hey, I ain't used plaster. But Roberto Garcia, pretty much, I just think is a guy that's just putting him in the ring with. He's no Peter McNeely, or any guy bum off the street. But I just think he's a fighter that Top Rank's throwing Margarito in the ring with. So anyway, that was the distance. Thanks for watching. Peace.